Okay, welcome to our colloquium talk this week. It's our pleasure to introduce our speaker, Champrita Das Roy from IIT Madras. And she will talk about an operator theoretic approach to study an inverse problem in PDE. Okay, please, you can start your talk now.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I thank Professor Basu for giving me an opportunity to talk about my work on this platform. So, as the title suggests, I'm going to talk about inverse problems in PDE with an operator theoretic approach. So, let me first introduce what is an inverse problem. So, an inverse problem is a problem to recover the parameters of an unknown system from some observation of its external properties. For example, determination of the heat conductivity of an object from a set of observation of the temperature on the external surface of that object. Now, this problem, like many other inverse problems, are formulated as operator equation. They're studied by formulating them as operator equations. Now, the biggest challenge to study an inverse problem is that of ill-posedness. That means they do not satisfy Hadamard's conditions of well-posedness, which are existence, uniqueness, and stability. Now, the problem is that even under certain condition, we have existence of a unique solution. That solution may not be stable with respect to the data. Now, this causes a serious problem in practical field, because as I said that we are given with only some observations of the data. So we may not know the data exactly. So the corresponding solution that we obtain from that data, which are called noisy data, that approximate solution may not be close to our desired solution, as it's not stable with respect to the data. So in that case, we use the method of regularization to solve this problem and find a stable approximate solution. But then, even when we find a stable approximate solution, the question arises: how close is that approximate solution to the exact solution? Then, we want to actually find the best possible candidate for that approximate solution. So these are the questions I'm going to address for the inverse problem that I'm going to consider. Now, before that, let me talk further about ill-posedness. So let me start with a simple example. So consider this operator T from C01 to C01, where C01 is the space of all real valued continuous functions on the interval 0, 1 with sup norm. This operator is defined as T of f equal to integral 0 to x ft dt. Now, let us consider this operator equation. So for any h in C01, let us consider the operator equation Tf equal to h. Now, we can check easily that this operator equation has no existence, uniqueness, and stability of solution. But if h is 0 at 0, if h is in this subspace of C01, then it has a solution. And additionally, if we also impose the condition of positivity, that is f is greater than equal to 0, then we also have uniqueness. But even then, the solution is not stable. So now, how we overcome this problem? How we get a stable approximate solution, that is what we are going to look at. So we are going to see how we deal with this problem for operator equations in Hilbert spaces. So let x and y be Hilbert spaces, and let T from x to y be a bounded linear operator. And then let us consider this operator equation Tx equal to y naught for some y naught in capital Y. Now, so what are the cases we have? So the first case is the range of T is a closed subspace of Y. Then y can be written as the direct sum of the range of T and the orthogonal complement of the range of T. And in that case, the best approximation of y naught in range of T exists. Equivalently, the operator equation Tx equal to P of y naught has a solution, and if T is not injective, then T restricted to the null space of T perp of x equal to P of y naught. This operator equation has a unique solution which we denote by x naught dagger. Now, equivalently again, x naught dagger is the stable solution of this operator equation. So, and the operator T dagger, which takes y to x dagger, is called the Moore-Penrose inverse of T, and also it is bounded, that we have said earlier. So, here the Moore-Penrose inverse of T gives us our approximate solution. Now, okay, so this lemma I state, which I'm going to use later. So if x and y are Hilbert spaces, let T from x to y be a bounded linear operator which is bounded below. Since it's bounded below, its range of T is closed, and so this operator is bounded linear. And if this is any norm on x such that this satisfies, that is bounded below, then we have this inequality. Now let us see the case when range of T is not closed. So then what happens? Then this subspace RT plus RT perp, this is not equal to the whole of T, but Moore-Penrose inverse restricted to this subspace exists, but that is not bounded. So we cannot use this Moore-Penrose inverse here. So what can we use instead? So let us consider this operator equation T star T plus alpha I of x equal to T star of y naught for alpha positive. Now T star T is a positive self-adjoint operator and alpha is greater than 0. So this operator T star T plus alpha I is invertible, and what we have is this operator equation is well posed. That means it has a unique stable solution. Not only that, if y naught is in the domain of the Moore-Penrose inverse operator, then x alpha, that means the x alpha is the solution of this operator equation. X alpha converges to x naught dagger as alpha tends to 0. So what we have is, so we got an auxiliary equation, or rather an auxiliary problem, which is well posed, and what we saw is that and also that well-posed equations, that well-posed problem satisfies this condition that the solution of that well-posed equation is close to our desired solution. So this method is known as regularization method, and this family of operators is called a regularization family. In particular, this taking this type of operator equations as our auxiliary problem, this method is known as Tikhonov regularization. This is a very well-known regularization method that is used widely in different forms. Now I'll come to my inverse problem. As I already said that I'm going to study an inverse problem in PDE. Now to study PDE's partial differential equations, very important spaces that comes are Sobolev spaces. So what are the spaces? So the thing is, so in a partial differential equation, if we consider the classical solutions, the solutions need to be differentiable in order to satisfy the differential equations, right? But in practical problems, most of the functions that we come across that may not be differentiable or not even continuous. So in that case, what we do, and in some cases we may not even have a function. So there, what we do, we have to cater to all those cases, we have the concept of distribution. So distribution is the generalization of functions. But I'm not going into distribution because I'm not going to use distributions here. So I will talk about Sobolev spaces, which are the generalization of differentiable functions. So let us see how do we have the definition. So if U is a LP function, then if alpha is this n tuple in the set of all natural numbers, is such that there exists some V alpha in L1 of U. Okay, this capital Q is a domain in Rn. By domain, I mean an open connected set. So for any U in LP, if I have some V alpha in L1 of U satisfying this integral operator, this integral equation, where Cc infinity of U is the space of all infinitely differentiable functions on U, real valued infinitely differentiable functions on U with compact support. By compact support, I mean that the closure of the set on which the functions are non-zero, that set is compact. Now, so if for any U, I have a function V alpha which satisfies this, then we say that this V alpha is called the distributional derivative of U of order alpha. Let us note that this is, here we kind of use the derivative of the Cc infinity functions and define the distributional derivative of U. So we don't need any differentiability condition on the U. We only need that U is in LP. Now, now what is the space WMP of U? So WMP of U is the space of all U in LP of U such that there exists a V alpha in LP of U satisfying 1, that is this equation, for all mod alpha less than equal to M. That means it is the space of all those LP functions whose distributional derivatives of order less than equal to M are also in LP. So this space is known as, now this space endowed with this norm, that is this norm is known as a Sobolev space. Now this is a Banach space. Not only that, for P equal to 2 case, this is a Hilbert space, and we denote it by a different notation, that is Hm of U. Now for M greater than N, so these I state these results because I'm going to need it later. I mean these properties of Hilbert Sobolev spaces, which I'm going to need later. So for M greater than N, WMPU is continuously embedded in WNP of U. By continuous embedding, I mean that not only WMP of U is contained in WNP of U, but also the inclusion operator is continuous. And also, if U is a one-dimensional domain, then Hm of U is continuously embedded in M-1 differentiable functions on U closure, Cm-1 of U closure. Now I talk about this fractional Sobolev spaces, but I am not going to go into the details. So this is the space of all boundary values of elements of W2PU. So why did I put this boundary values within quote unquote? Because these are, after all, they are all LP functions, just LP functions. And LP functions, and boundary is a set of measure 0. So LP functions restricted to boundary doesn't actually make sense. So so these boundary values are defined in a different sense, which I'm not going into the details because that itself is going to take a separate talk. So I just leave it there, leave it as that it is in some sense the boundary values of elements of W2P of U. I'm saying this so that one can get a feel of what I'm going to use in the later part, when I use these spaces in the later part. And also H half of U is the space of all boundary values of elements of H1 of U. Now I come to the problem. So inverse conductivity problem with partial data. So I'm going to talk about the problem that I have told about right in the beginning, that is the conductivity problem. So let omega be a domain in R3 with appropriately smooth boundary del omega. Again, by domain I mean bounded domain. So by domain I mean open connected set, and smooth boundary means uh, the boundary is the graph of a smooth function. So if I have my omega like this, then consider this PDE, this Neumann boundary value problem. Now the usual problem is finding. The usual problem in PDE that occurs is finding the solution U of this boundary value problem. Now that it's known in literature that it has a stable approximate solution provided Q satisfies this condition. Now let us consider the inverse problem. So the inverse problem is, if J is in this space and it satisfies this, then if U is equal to G on capital gamma, the capital gamma is a C1 curve on the boundary and G is a continuously differentiable function on capital gamma, then I want to recover Q. So the problem is, here we know the solution U only on a curve, C1 curve on the boundary. And then with that information, I want to recover the parameter function Q satisfying this PDE, this Neumann boundary value problem. Now Cannon first studied this problem and he showed that Q can be identified uniquely only on the image of G. Now image of G is clearly a closed and bounded interval in R, and he showed the existence and uniqueness of solution. So this particular problem has existence and uniqueness. So a unique solution exists for this problem. But this problem is ill-posed in the sense that Q restricted to I does not depend continuously on data G and J. So we don't have stability of solution. So in order to tackle this problem, we have to use some regularization method. So Kugler and Egger et al. Use different forms of Tikhonov regularization to find a stable approximate solution. So what do they do? So Kugler showed with additional assumption on Q, and when Q is in H4 of I and noisy data J delta. So here he didn't consider both J and G to have noisy data. So G is known exactly, but only J has noise. So J delta is the only noisy data. Then he obtained a convergence rate of order root delta in H1 norm. That means H1 norm of the difference of the approximate solution and the exact solution is less than equal to constant times root delta. Now Egger et al. Obtained the same result with no additional condition on Q for Q in H4 of I and noisy data J delta and G delta. So here they have considered noise in both the datas, but the noisy data need to satisfy these conditions. So in our paper, we formulate a new regularization method to obtain a stable approximate solution. So what do we do? If Q is approximately known at G1, so G1 is the right end point of the interval I, that is the image of G. So if Q is approximately known at G1, then with no additional assumption on noisy data J delta, G delta. So we didn't assume any additional assumption on noisy data J delta, G delta, because we thought that uh, putting additional assumption on noisy data is not very practical. So with no additional assumption on noisy data, for Q with H3 of I, so here we have less regularity compared to the one needed in the literature. So for Q in H3 of I, we obtain the same convergence rate of order root delta in H1 now, and a better convergence rate of order delta power 2 by 3 in L2 now. So now, excuse me. So now let us see our method. So we need these two assumptions on gamma and G, which were also assumed in the previous two papers that I mentioned. So both gamma and the derivative of gamma and G should be bounded below and above by positive constants. So these are the assumptions we are putting. Then let Vj be the solution of this Neumann boundary value problem. So if Vj is the solution of this Neumann boundary value problem, then Vj is continuously differentiable over the closure of omega. And if the interval I is defined like this, then it can be checked using appropriate substitution that our problem is to find Q in H1 of I such that this integral equation is satisfied. Now let us note that this is a non-linear problem. I mean, it can be seen from here easily. Now we can differentiate both sides and we obtain a unique solution to our problem. Now this equation can be represented as the operator equation this, where T of Q is the left hand side and Fj is the right hand side. Now let us note that our problem is non-linear, but here we represent it as a linear operator equation. But the cost is that we have to pay is that the price that we have to pay is that the data G, I mean the operator T contains data G. So it's like the data G is contained inside T. So the operator T is dependent on the data G. So let us see how do we proceed. So in order to consider a new regularization method, we consider T as composition of three bounded linear operators T1, T2, T3, where T1 is from H1i to H2 of I, T2 is from H2i to L2 of I, and T3 is from L2i to L2 of 0, 1, where T1 is the integral operator, T2 is the embedding, and T3 is composition by G composed gamma. Now what we see is that T2 is a compact operator, but both T1 and T3 are bounded linear operators which are also bounded below. So what we have is that T1 and T3 are bounded linear operators with bounded inverse from their ranges, but T2 does not have a bounded inverse because T2 is a compact operator from infinite dimensional space. So T2 does not have a bounded inverse. So what we see is that the instability of our problem is entirely due to T2. So our problem reduces to regularizing the operator equation of T2. So to find a stable approximate solution of our problem, we want to find a regularized solution W alpha of this operator equation. Now, if W alpha is in the range of T1, then T1 inverse of W alpha, which is nothing but W alpha prime, is a regularized solution of this equation. Now here let us note that this W alpha prime is our usual derivative. Why? Because T2 is a function from H2 of I, and as we have seen, the the result before, that H2 of I is continuously embedded in C1 of I. So W alpha is continuously differentiable. So this is the usual derivative. Now let us see the new regularization. So for 0 less than alpha less than equal to 1, let T2 alpha from H2I to L2I be defined by this T2 alpha of W equal to W minus alpha times W double prime for W in H2 of I. Here W double prime is in terms of distribution. So this derivative is distributional derivative. Then we have the following. So T2 alpha is a bounded linear map and T2 alpha converges to T2 as alpha tends to 0. So clearly we are going to use T2, the operator T2 alpha to formulate our new regularization method. So what we see is that if we consider this closed subspace of H2I, which is all those elements of H2I, which is 0 at G0 and whose derivative is 0 at G1. Now again let us note that H2I is continuously embedded in C1 of I. So all these terms make sense. Now what we see is that on this closed subspace, T2 alpha is bounded below and it also satisfies this inequality. So what we see is that T2 alpha on this subspace behaves well, behaves nicely as we desire. So we are going to work with T2 alpha restricted to W from now on, and we are going to use the notation, same notation T2 alpha for T2 alpha restricted to W. Now what we see is that the operator R alpha, which is defined as the Moore-Penrose inverse of T2 alpha, that is that as an operator from L2I to H2 of I is well defined. Not only that, it is also bounded linear and it satisfies this inequality. Using these two inequality, what we see is that excuse me, what we see is that this R alpha T2 norm of R alpha T2 is less than equal to some constant independent of alpha, and R alpha T2 H2 norm of norm of R alpha T2 minus identity is less than equal to some constant times alpha on this subspace W intersection H4 of I. Now this subspace is dense in W. So what we have is R alpha T2 converges to the identity operator as alpha tends to 0 on the subspace W. Hence, the family R alpha of operators is a regularization family for the operator T2. So if B alpha is equal to R alpha of T3 inverse of Fj, then this B alpha is in W, which is can be checked, which is contained in range of T1. Hence, Q alpha, which is defined as T1 inverse of B alpha, that is a regularized solution to our problem. And Q alpha is 0 at G1. Thus, we have this error estimate under exact data. That is, if our J and G satisfies the condition as stated earlier, and if Q naught is in H1 of I, such that Q naught is 0 at G1 and it satisfies the equation exactly, and if Q alpha is our regularized solution, then we have the following. That means Q alpha is indeed a stable approximate solution to our problem. But the more interesting and more important case is the problem with noisy data. So if we have noisy data J delta and G epsilon, So let us see. So now what happens is, so I'm not going into the details here because that is going to take a lot more time. I'm going to just give a feel of what we have done. So the thing is here, we have noisy data. So J occurs in the right hand side and G occurs as a part of the operator T3. So T3 is defined as composition with G composed gamma. Not only that, T3 as an operator is defined from L2 of I. Now, the thing is, if we have G epsilon instead of G, then if we define the perturbed operator T3 epsilon as composition with G epsilon composed gamma, then then as an operator from H1 of I, it does not make sense. So in that case, the assumption made by Edgar et al. That image of G epsilon is contained in G comes handy. But since we do not have this type of assumption, what we do is we consider working with the intersection. That is the intersection of the image of G and the image of G epsilon. But the thing is, the intersection of image of G and image of G epsilon, that may not, not only that it may not be non-empty, but the intersection may not be a set of measure, positive measure. I mean, it can be a set of measure 0. So what we do is that we take an auxiliary function, that is, we take an orthogonal projection of G epsilon composed gamma on the space of all linear, piecewise linear polynomials, so that that function is continuous and also it is in W1 infinity, so that the distributional derivative of the auxiliary function is close to the derivative of G, and that ensures us that for epsilon, if we choose epsilon small enough, then their image is going to intersect not only, I mean, the intersection is not only going to be non-empty, but also the intersection will contain some non-degenerate interval. So we can define the perturbed operator cleverly on this intersection, I mean, using this intersection, and so that the perturbed operator satisfies the desired properties, that is, it is bounded below and it is close to the operator T3, so that ultimately we obtain this theorem. That is the results that we had promised earlier, right at the beginning. So these are my references. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much for a very nice talk.
Very nice talk.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good.
Any questions, anyone?
Okay. Maybe Sudeshna, you can take over because.
Yeah. So yeah, very nice talk.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So this is something which I'm also not so much familiar, so I really cannot ask anything extremely meaningful questions, but I really enjoyed this aspect of operator theory that you're working on. And we will just announce the next week's talk. As many of you know, that this is Malavika Pramanik will be talking on, so we can solve x plus y equal to 2z. Actually, I made a mistake. There's a typo. It should be x plus y equal to 2z, and when this can be solvable. So that will be next week, and next week the talk will be at 8:30 p.m. So everyone remember, it's not our usual time because Malavika lives in, Vancouver, and so the time difference is different. So it's 8 a.m. for her actually. So we will be having the talk at 8:30 p.m. Indian time. So please, everyone, come. And Shamprita, am I pronouncing your name correct?
Yes, it's fine.
Very nice. And can you send us the slides so that we can share it with the...
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll send.
Good. Very good. So I guess, Stefan, we can end the meeting, but I want to talk to you about something. So if you can be there, and if everyone, I mean, there's no problem if they are there, but I just want to check something. If you can stop recording, I just want to check something for next time.
Okay. Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you
So
very
I will
much again.
You can leave if you want. Yes,
Yeah, I'll leave.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Once you stop recording, I want to. Yeah. Is the recording stop? Not yet.
Moment. One moment. So, yeah.
The recording is still going on.
Oh, it's not yet. Okay.